let's open up the meeting then. We're going to open up first as a board of canvassers, and I would like to open up the meeting. I am Peter Kaczynski, Commissioner. Joining me today is Commissioners Kellner and Spano. There still is not a second Republican commissioner. As you know, a few weeks ago, I put out a statement that I would not be meeting again until a Republican commissioner was appointed. I'm here today because I know today is one of the most important functions that this board undertakes, which is certifying the ballot for the November election. I felt it was critical that we finish that job, and today is our day to do that. So I felt that it was necessary that I attend this meeting in order to complete our mission. The second reason is that I feel I accomplished what I wanted to, which was to publicize the fact that there is still not a second Republican commissioner here at the State Board of Elections. I do appreciate Commissioner Kellner's support on that issue, as well as the League of Women Voters have weighed in on that as well. So I felt we've made it well known that this is a problem here at the State Board. And it's my understanding that the governor is going to make an appointment in the imminent future. So with that in mind, I am ready to go forward with the meeting. And we will open today as a board of canvassers to consider the election, the special election of September 23rd in the 27th Congressional District, and to certify those election results. So do the commissioners have the results in front of them that were sent to us by the staff?
I do.
I do.
Okay, is there any discussion regarding that, or is there a motion?
I move that we certify the results as circulated.
So moved. And I will second. And all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I hear none opposed. It was unanimous. So I believe that completes the job of the Board of Canvassers today. So we can adjourn out of that meeting and open up as a meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the State Board of Elections. With that in mind, I would entertain a motion regarding minutes. We have two sets of minutes before us. We have minutes of the April 27th meeting and the minutes of the May 27th meeting, both of which have not been approved by the commissioners. I believe we all have received a copy of that or of those minutes. If there is any discussion or a motion, I would entertain that now.
I move that we approve the minutes as circulated.
Is there a second?
That.
And that's seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And opposed, and those have been approved. So with that in mind, we'll move on to the unit updates. And the first unit for consideration is the executive unit, Bob Brem and Todd Valentine.
Good afternoon. It's been busy, but there's a few things we certainly want to highlight here. Is obviously one of the things we're here to do later in the meeting is to complete the ballot access rulings with regards to the independent petition process, and this would give us the material necessary to certify the general election ballot to the county boards on time. So that's one phase. That will then allow, obviously, the military or the UOCAVA ballots to be able to get produced and be sent out on time. Obviously, one of those features is, obviously we'll be surveying the counties to make sure, pursuant to our requirements with the Department of Justice, to make sure that those go out on time. We've been busy with a number of the executive orders that required us to set up a web-based portal to allow absentee application be made through our web-based system, or the counties have to set up their own or not linked to ours. That has been stood up and is running at this point. And obviously it's been translated to both, available in both Spanish and in English. The city board has its own portal, so if any city voters and Erie County, they have their own portals, and if voters from those locations come in there, they are redirected to those. So they provide in the city the additional languages that are required under their orders. We also, related to the executive orders, we were required to develop what was a uniform absentee ballot envelope, and we had to re-uniform not just a single ballot envelope, because it's actually a series of 3 envelopes, and the counties do utilize different size envelopes. So what we did was standardize the basic face of the envelopes and then the back side of the envelopes. Obviously, we had to make some accommodations for the most crowded envelope, which would be the 5 languages that the city board uses primarily in Queens. But then after that, it would allow sufficient white space, and we did that in conjunction with the Center for Civic Design that helps us highlight some of the usability features that we tried to add to that, particularly in one of the issues that was raised after the primary elections, that voters didn't know where to sign. So we made it abundantly clear where that signature should be placed and having language to remind the voters for that. And in addition, we also had to amend the envelope to specifically address the statutory change for the return date for the absentee ballot, so that the postmark needs to be not the day before election, but the day of the election. So that was a significant change we had to deal. Related to that was the mailers that the counties are required to send out, supposed to be by today. We really, time didn't us permit to do a single mailer. So what we did was we took the elements of the executive order and put together language that could be utilized for the mailers that they were going to send out. Obviously, we wouldn't have time to translate into 5 languages or things like that. And they had to customize each one anyway for additional individual voter information with regard to their polling site. So we took care of that. And then the next phase that we're doing, which is due by the 20th, is to counties are obligated to report, if they have outstanding staffing needs, and the state board, if feasible, is supposed to assist in filling those voids. One of the things that we had started already doing was participating in National Poll Worker Recruitment Day, which was September 1st, and that has produced quite a response on our website for people who want to be poll workers. We then redirect them to the individual counties, who then can in turn contact the voter to figure out if they're available and whether or not they can fulfill needs that the counties need at this point in time. And what we're going to do is put together basically a structured survey that the counties can input information for the number of workers they have, where they think there are voids in order to meet their statutory requirements. Bob, over to you.
Thank you. A couple other items. I know the staff has worked to provide guidance with regard to accessible ballot applications for voters with disability. That guidance and web session went to the county boards, as well as a cybersecurity directive of specific items we wanted the counties to address in time for the general election. And that went out on August 31st to the counties also. So that's the only other, in addition to what Todd already covered.
Okay. Are there any questions for the executive directors? Okay. Then hearing none, we'll move on to our next unit, the councils, Kim Galvin and Brian Quayle.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
I can hear you fine, Kim.
Okay, thank you. The council's office has been extremely busy since we last spoke. In the Sam Working Families Party case, which was a case challenging the new party thresholds, the preliminary injunction motion was argued and the judge ruled in our favor that the new party thresholds were constitutional. The companion, if you will, case to that, the Libertarian and Green Party, the answer has been submitted. League of Women Voters 2, the absentee ballot notice and cure provisions has taken up quite a bit of time. If you recall, we got served with that complaint. The legislature passed a law fixing or attempting to fix most of it, and then the governor signed that law and issued an executive order 3 days later amending that law. So we've had the complaint, the law, and the executive order trying to work out something with the plaintiffs to sign a consent decree We've managed to get about 97% there, I would say. We exchanged drafts with the plaintiffs as late as last week. The League of Women Voters is meeting this afternoon. We're hopeful that they will approve what the plaintiffs have put together, their attorneys have put together for them. Hopefully we can get a consent decree filed in that case. We're also working on the instructions for the county boards of elections, trying to break it down as simply as we can, understanding, of course, that this is going to be a less than ideal timing for the undertaking of such a large program in light of the number of absentee ballots that they're going to be looking at this year. We're doing everything we can for anybody within the sound of my voice to get it out as quickly as possible for you. Let's see, Ison, if you remember, we had a case, all these cases are in the Southern District. We had a case challenging the new signature requirements for independent nominating petitions. That was argued. The new signature requirements were upheld. The accessibility lawsuit that Bob just recently mentioned, if you recall, the plaintiffs and the board reached an agreement on the preliminary injunction for the June primary. We were unable to reach an agreement for the general election. The preliminary injunction motion was argued and the judge found in favor of the board's proposal to provide accessible absentee ballots to those with reading visual infirmities that would require them to need an accessible ballot. So we have, in conjunction with the judge's order, we have posted the accessible ballot, we have translated it, we have done the instructions, we have issued a press release, we have notified the counties of the vendors that they are to use. This will require the counties, upon building the ballots within 2 days of that completion, to provide those ballots to an accessible vendor for remediation, and then upon demand, email them to the person that affirms that they need such a ballot. There is also an accessible ballot option in the new portal that the State Board of Elections has recently stood up. The Gallagher postmark case down with Judge Torres. The judge ruled in favor of the plaintiffs and required that all counties throughout the state reopen their counts and canvass those ballots that were received up to 2 days after the general election that did not have a postmark on them. The counties did that and recertified the numbers to us. The plaintiffs,
Kim, do you know how many ballots that amounted to?
no, I don't. I know Brooklyn was the biggest one with a few thousand, but there wasn't that many all throughout the rest of the state. I think, I don't know, less than 1,000. Brian, do you know that number?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't know the specific number, but your characterization is exactly right. I think it was in the hundreds outside of New York City.
Outside of the Brooklyn issue.
I'm talking specifically about ballots that would not have had a postmark, that would have arrived after Election Day within 2 days, and then would have been counted pursuant to the court's order.
Yeah, I believe it was less than 1,000 statewide overall.
Okay.
Except for in Brooklyn, where they had that little glitch for a couple thousand.
But that was, I mean, that included ballots that came in after the 2-day window in Brooklyn, right? I mean, those that weren't date stamped by the post office, there were some that came in that still were not going to be counted pursuant to the court order.
Correct.
Okay.
The plaintiffs seem to be moving for another preliminary injunction, even though both the executive office and our office feels as though most of the relief that they pled in their original complaint was dealt with. So we'll see where that goes. League of Women Voters 1, moving the registration date up to 10 days before the election. We filed an answer in that case last week. We filed a brief in the appellate division responding to the Division of Election Law Enforcement's appeal of the lower court's decision that she comply with the law. Maybe that's too basic of a summary, but I don't think so. We did a January failure to file and list of deficiencies that went over to the enforcement unit. We have begun conversations with the Department of Justice on standard thing they start to reach out to us about now to make sure we don't see any unforeseen problems with getting the military ballots uploaded and out by the 18th, the Uokava ballots. And the Upstate Jobs Party motions for summary judgment have been fully briefed. I think that's it. We've been very busy. We're, like I said, we're trying to take that notice and cure provision and get it out as soon as we can to the counties, because we feel as though it's going to be a problem, specifically with those with New York City. But
yeah, maybe we could talk about that just for a second. That cure provision. So that's
Sure.
if the application comes in or the ballot comes in without a signature. Is it both?
No, well, hopefully the ballots aren't signed, but if the ballot envelope comes back in and isn't signed or is not marked and there's a witness, or marked without a witness, or signed by a power of attorney or an attorney in fact, or those sorts of things, the counties are required to provide notice to the voter with an affirmation that allows them to cure that infirmity with the ballot/oath envelope. We have also gone, as the plaintiff's complaint directed outside of the statute a little bit, such things like ballot envelopes filled out in pencil. Some boards of elections were invalidating those. We made it clear that you can use pencil, pen, or any other writing instrument to fill out that particular ballot. If the inside oath envelope was taped, New York City sometimes had a problem with tape on the inside envelope. As long as the outside envelope is completely secured, we're saying that those are fine. Extrinsic marks or small tears as a result of mailing or things like that that may have occurred on the envelope, we're telling the counties they have to count those. What the executive order did is cut the time frame for ballots received post-election, on or after election, to a 5-day cure when the statute required a 7-day cure, which puts us right back in the same problem with the calendar. If you ask me, that you get the absentee ballot back and you have 5 days to notify the voter and allow them to cure their ballot within 5 days. It doesn't seem, unless there's an email or a phone number provided, I don't think the mail is going to suffice in that particular instance. But the plaintiffs understood that in this election there was, time considerations for finalizing the vote. So they've agreed to that for this election. So that's where we are there.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else or any questions for the counsel's office? Hearing none, we will move on to the election operations. Tom Conley and Brendan Lavallo.
Thank you, Commissioner. With regard to some general operations, we received and processed filings for the independent nominating petition period for the general election. We have provided a prima facie report for your consideration later in the meeting. We also received filings for president, vice president electors for the general election. We did collect amended statements of canvass from the county boards for the elections that occurred on June 23rd as a result of the Gallagher litigation that Kim was just talking about. You guys signed the canvassing documents for that earlier. We have been preparing the certification documents for the general election for sending out to the counties. We also did circulate some guidance on changes to the ballot design as a result of the Voter-Friendly Ballot Act, which went into effect on July 1st, 2020. So obviously, once the county boards have the general election certification and are programming their ballots, it's important for them to know that they should be designing those according to the new statute. With regard to electronic poll book systems, we did receive 2 updated configurations from NoInc and from 10X. We did complete our testing, and reports of that testing have been provided to the commissioners. Then there's a resolution for action later in the meeting on those configurations. With regard to the voting machines, we did receive a change request from New York City for the ES&S system. We did provide that information to ES&S for their response on how to actually approach making those changes and what costs might be involved. However, we do need to go back to ES&S because their response basically stated that the way that they would implement those changes would be to use a version of the system that has not yet been certified. So they really should have responded as to how they can make those changes to the existing certified software. With regard to the ExpressVote Excel and the newer EMS that was submitted for testing by ES&S, SLI did complete its security and functional testing. NISTEC did complete its secondary source code review. That report was provided to SLI for their review. We do continue to have weekly discussions with ES&S, SLI, and NISTEC to discuss the status of the process and any discrepancies that remain open from testing. At this point, it is expected that SLI will be working to finalize their testing report for review, as will NISTEC and the election operations staff. Subsequent to the finalization of that process, the information would then be provided to the commissioners for their review at some upcoming meeting. With regard to Dominion, we have been performing testing on a small modification to the ICE and the ICP firmware. That testing is still undergoing. Staff has conducted or will be conducting acceptance testing for Dominion equipment at Livingston, Rensselaer, Greene, Chautauqua, Westchester, and Genesee counties for the precinct scanners, and at Tompkins County for a central count system. Staff has also been busy with doing acceptance testing for clear ballot systems. We have conducted or are conducting acceptance both on site here at the state board, but also at county boards for Cayuga, Ulster, Delaware, Oswego, Washington, and New York City. That is the totality of what I have for now, unless there's any questions.
Are there any questions from the commissioners? Nothing else to add, Tom or Brendan?
No, I'm good. You got it.
Okay. All right, hearing no questions, we'll move on to our next unit, which is NVRA and PIO, John Conklin and Cheryl Kauser.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So the Public Information Offices have been extremely busy since the last meeting, fielding so many questions about the counting of ballots, how absentee ballots work and how they're applied for and how they're canvassed and how they're cast and drop boxes and the consequences of the Gallagher decision, all of that stuff that we have been high volume of phone calls and emails as well. The unit processed 127 foils in May, 116 foils in June, and then the same number again in July, and 131 in August. We helped prepare testimony for the executive directors and the commissioners for the state legislature hearing on August 11th. The unit has published 4 press releases since the last board meeting, promoting the most recent one is the promotion of the creation of the absentee ballot web portal and the accessible absentee ballot web portal. As Todd mentioned, we also did the promotion with regard to National Poll Worker Recruitment Day, which was September 1st. That was extremely successful. We coordinated with the U.S. Election Assistance Commission, the county boards. We also brought in the Association of Towns, the Conference of Mayors, the Association of Counties, and the Business Council. They all helped us to promote that. We put banners all over the website promoting poll worker recruitment, and as I said, I think that worked very well. We also did a major revamp of the absentee ballot or the absentee voting page on the website, providing more explanation on a number of topics, including qualifications, how to apply, deadlines, post office and mailing considerations, how to cast an absentee ballot, can you vote in person after you've cast an absentee ballot. So there has been some significant changes on that page specifically. The two other press releases were for the deadline surrounding the June 23rd primary and the initial accessible absentee ballot application that we posted to the website for the June 23rd election. With regard to NVRA, obviously we're not doing visits, but we're monitoring the county reports for any anomalies as well. We're following up on voter history from the June 23rd election. There's still a few counties that have not completed that, so we're following up with them. With regard to website accessibility coordinator, the next report is due September 15th. We are working on that. That will be given to the co-executive directors at that point, and then 7 business days later it will be given to the plaintiffs in the case. Lastly, as Kim mentioned, the DOJ surveys for the general election, those will go out today in an email to all the counties for tracking of UOCAVA, MOVE Act, military and overseas voter ballots. Cheryl, do you want to do a little recap on grants?
Thank you. Regarding grant administration, the State Board of Elections and TIO is managing 7 grant programs, 3 of which expire this year. The HAVA COVID funds expire on November 16th, and the New York State Aid to Localities and Capital Grant Funds expire at the end of December. We reached out to the EAC, which is the Election Administration Assistance Commission, and confirmed that the informational mailer that was required under Executive Order 202.58 is an eligible expense under both the HAVA CARES Act and the Shoebox Funds. In addition, we went through the New York State Aid to Localities funding for early voting, and it's also an eligible expense for counties to use those funds as well. That would be all for the grants.
Okay, thank you. So that's everything for PIO, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for PIO? Hearing none, we'll move on to ITU, which is Bill Cross.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll start with projects. Capicitis, the team continues to make progress. At this point, multiple aspects of application testing, functional testing, performance, load testing, security, and of course, accessibility testing. We're still on track for the date we previously mentioned before in January 21, after the periodic campaign financial disclosure report. Online voter registration. With the hold, the capital funds has now been removed by Division of Budget. We are again moving forward with the OVR project. We're currently working with OGS to update the mini bid release for the end of October, and we will be reaching out to schedule stakeholder meetings around the project, including state, ITS, DMV, NVRA agencies, vendors, et cetera, and the county boards, of course. The absentee ballot portal has been mentioned a couple of times. We quickly implemented the portal, which went live late Monday last week. Since then, we've received and processed over 195,000 requests through that portal. That as also is noted, that does not include New York City or Erie that have their own portals, but for everyone else, those are the figures currently. For Nice Voter, we're currently working on several enhancements, including implementing early voting poll site lookup for polls for the voter lookup, as well as display of local ballot information that is due, I believe, in January as well. For security, we continue to make good progress with the counties, and there's a 2020 cybersecurity remediation grant program. To date, we have 57 county boards that have submitted plans. 46 of those are now in final form, and 19 have been fully approved. We've also completed the project to upgrade all secure connections to the county boards, updating and replacing all older equipment. Everything's new and tested and certified for disaster recovery to our secondary data center. I think it was also mentioned the directive that was issued, but the Security Election Center is working to develop a comprehensive set of cybersecurity standards for all the county boards. But we've isolated a key set of 9 initiatives that require implementation prior to the general election, and those have been issued as an executive directive. As always, we continue to work on several internal security improvements of our own infrastructure. For the website traffic remains higher than normal, particularly around the absentee voting information page that John just mentioned. For August, we have just over 640,000 views for August on the absentee voting page. And that is my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Bill. Any questions from the commissioners? There being none, then we'll move on to our final unit, which is enforcement. And I believe Ms. Sugarman, is she on the meeting? I believe not. So we'll pass that. Is there any interest? I know we had a July report that's been financial report that's been filed with the board since our last meeting. Brian, do you have statistics on how many came in or how many were referred to the enforcement unit?
Commissioner, for the July periodic report, the staff advises me that there are 3,681 filings that remain outstanding. For the January periodic report, 2,955 remain outstanding. That data is as of today.
And do you know what percentage that is, Brian, of the total files?
No, I do not.
Okay. I'm wondering if that's going up or down since our previous report. You're not sure about that, though.
Well, I can say that the total number outstanding from the 2019 July periodic right now remains at 2,231, and it began in July of 2019 at 3,181. So it would appear to me that the numbers are actually not headed in the right direction. Certainly we can provide you with any specific computations that you might like, but my thumbnail view of the numbers is that it's not a favorable trend.
Well, what I'm interested in is if there's a trend, considering the enforcement unit has not been pursuing failures to file really for the last 5 years, whether we've seen any impact that failure has had on the number of filers that make the filings in the various reports that are required by law, to see if that's having an impact in the sense of it's causing fewer filers to make their filings, more filers to not make their, how that's playing out. So yeah, I am interested if there's a trend. So if you could do something along those lines, that'd be helpful.
Well, I can assure you there is a trend. The delinquency numbers are higher. At the next meeting, we'd be happy to provide chapter and verse on that.
Okay, that'd be great. Okay, is there anything else for the units from any of the commissioners? Any other questions? No, then we'll move on to old business. Is there any old business to come before the board today? I believe not. I have nothing on my agenda, so if there's no old business, we'll go to new business. So new business really amounts to the certification issue, which is the rulings that the board is to make on the independent petitions. And I know we had a report filed or given to us by the staff regarding the petitions that were filed, objections that were made to various petitions, and findings that the staff made vis-a-vis those particular filings. And I would ask if the commissioners have any questions regarding that report, or if there's a motion, or however the commissioners wish to proceed. I'm hearing nothing. So I guess there needs to be, if not a question, a motion. We need to at least adopt what the board had, or what the staff has given us, or not validate it, whichever, but one way or the other, we need to make a move on this particular document.
I'm sorry, I was muted.
That's okay.
I make a
That's okay.
motion to adopt.
A motion to adopt from Commissioner Spano. Is there a second?
I second.
You second. Commissioner Kellner seconds. All in favor, say aye.
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 And those opposed, that is carried unanimously. So that is the first piece of old business. That is adopted. Then the next business, I believe, was alluded to earlier, and that is the upgrade to the e-poll books. And maybe someone, I don't know, Tom, do you want to explain that, or Brendan, explain what that upgrade is about?
Sure thing, Commissioner. So obviously, the operating systems on the two systems that were submitted for No Ink and 10X, they both run on the Apple iOS operating system. Since the last certified configuration back in April, Apple has released a number of updated iOSs underlying the applications. So the vendors were improving their systems to not only work with the newer versions of the iOS, but also, for the most part, just kind of addressing some various improvements on the back end, a lot of stuff that won't necessarily be seen by the poll workers or the voters, a few bug fixes that they found, but otherwise they really wouldn't impact anything substantially on the front end for those two systems. In the resolution that I provided that's before you, the counties do have the option of either implementing the new versions immediately for use at the November General. Obviously, with the time frame being slightly tight, they also have the option to continue on using the version that they have installed presently if deploying the latest version creates any kind of issue, but we do ask that they then update their systems accordingly, not later than December 31st of this year.
Okay. Are these updates that are really required because Apple's upgraded their operating system?
It's kind of a variety. Obviously, these two systems both run on the Apple operating system, the Rovus system, which is not in addition, it runs on the Windows operating system. Both companies update their underlying operating systems for various security or other functionality improvements. And so whenever they do update that, a lot of the time they'll want their devices, in this case the iPads, to kind of update to use the latest so that they're obviously as secure as possible. A lot of times the vendors may have to make some tweaks to their software and do some testing to make sure that their applications are running appropriately on these newer operating system versions.
Okay. Thank you for that. Are there any other questions for Tom or Brendan on this topic before we entertain it?
I move the adoption of the resolution.
There's a motion to adopt. There's a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That again is carried unanimously. That is the end of the new business that I have on my agenda. Is there any other new business to come before the board? I do have one issue. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner, you go ahead.
No, that's okay. I have a couple of just information items. One is that on Friday, on very short notice, we circulated this announcement of very large potential grants, I believe that it's a genuine source of funding for all of the counties, and I would hope that they could meet the very short deadline to make a submission today to do it. The city of Philadelphia announced that they received $10 million, that strikes me as real money, and $250 million was available nationwide. which is almost as much as the federal CARES money that we got for the primary. I hope that will proceed.
Okay. Did you have something else? You indicated you had two things.
Well, and then I'm still concerned about New York City, and especially planning for Election Day itself and compliance with the 30-minute rule. And I would hope that we would be able to deploy some resources in order to monitor that as things develop.
And what are you suggesting that we would deploy?
Well, that the operations unit, to the extent that it's feasible, would be able to do surveys on Election Day in order to actually quantify the lines and let the city know that we will be measuring it for compliance.
Is the operations unit prepared to do something along those lines?
We have not.
We can certainly talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand.
It's just in a plan, so we can definitely talk about what we can do and put in place.
Okay. Well, let me say this about that issue. You know, we've certainly had this issue before us before. This isn't something new this year. We've had this issue from time to time where the city board is there's indications that there are people waiting more than 30 minutes. And it's been difficult, at least for me, to quantify it in any way about how widespread this is, where it occurs. Is it a repetition? Do certain poll sites seem to have this problem, for example, over and over again? And what can the board do to address them? It certainly would be helpful if we could get an overview of exactly how widespread this problem is. I hear a lot of anecdotal evidence of it, but I don't see any sort of study that indicates these are the exact poll sites where this is occurring, that it's maybe occurred there before, how long people are waiting, when these wait lines occur. Is it all day, or is it something that occurs around, maybe rush hour, say after work, after 5, or maybe before work? That information would be very useful if we could get it as far as addressing this issue, because it's very hard for me to address something when I don't know the scope of the problem or where the problem exists. So if there's something that can be done that way, I think that would be very helpful.
Hi, this is Echo Yanka. Can everybody hear me?
Sure.
Yes.
Maybe you should introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. So I'm Echo Yanka. I'm one of the problematic appointees, which is the Democratic appointee for the campaign finance, the Public Campaign Finance Board. We're waiting for my Republican counterpart. So I was teasing a bit about that, but I joined both the commissioners in saying I hope that's done so we can move forward shortly. I just want on this issue of finding out where there are longer lines than we need. Obviously, we want our own information and as reliable internal information as possible. But as some of you know, I've worked with, I used to be co-chair of New York Democratic Lawyers Council. And for years, we had quite good survey data, both from where we got phone calls, but also postmortems on the elections. And if those aren't perfect and internal, they may be a starting point in finding out where the problem spots are. Some of these things we know communities that feel underserved, that consistently report being underserved. So I wondered if we thought about reaching out to good governance groups outside of our own internal data, at least as a starting point to getting the information as to where poll sites might be overtaxed.
I would welcome data from whoever has the data. If other groups, if your lawyers group has data along these lines, I would definitely be interested in seeing it. If good government groups, I've just never seen the data myself in a comprehensive way. I've just heard over the years, again, anecdotal evidence that this site has a problem or that site has a problem, which I do agree needs to be addressed, but it would just be helpful to get an overview, and I have not seen that yet. So yeah, if there's something like that, that would be great.
Sure. So without promising anything I don't have at hand, why don't I send out a few emails and see if I can get a landscape view from the information we've had over the years?
That'd be great. That'd be great. That'd be very helpful. Thank you. Yeah, and along those lines, you're actually the only commissioner that's been appointed to that specific public financing board. There's actually 2 vacancies there that
Yes.
still exist, in addition to the Republican vacancy on this board. So we have 3 vacancies that currently exist on the public financing component of the Board of Elections, as you know, which is the 4 commissioners here plus the 3 additional commissioners. So there's still 3 openings on that board, as well as 1 opening on our board.
Now,
So
I didn't mean to throw gas on the fire, but
No, you're not throwing gas. It's a sensitive issue to me, as you're aware, and I do think it needs to be resolved. I mean, we need that resolution to go forward, not only as a board, but as the Public Financing Commission. We have a lot of decisions to make, I think, relative to that as well. And without a full board, I think it's very difficult to do. And I don't think it's fair to say the new commissioners, when they do come on, if we've already made a bunch of decisions that are going to affect them. So I really would urge those appointing authorities to get those appointments made as soon as possible so that we can start functioning as a public financing commission as well.
we're all in agreement. Yeah,
I'm sure we are. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but I think
Yeah.
this is our opportunity to sort of get it out there.
absolutely.
Unfortunately, we don't get a lot of press opportunities or
Yeah.
public opportunities. I think we need to take them when they exist to get our problems out there to the public. And one of them is just a lack of commissioners at both state board level and the Public Financing Commission level to be able to fully function and do the job that we've been assigned to do.
With
So
all,
I think it's good you brought that up.
Yeah, with all teasing aside, I've been obviously honored to be appointed and been doing a lot of the best I can to do my homework and catch up. But there is a sense, and I know you feel it on your side, but there's a sense certainly from my side that we're all in a bit of limbo, right? You're absolutely right. It wouldn't be fair to take substantive decisions. And so what I want to do is make sure I'm as up to speed and ready to hit the ground running. But there is a sense of being frozen in place. We're all eagerly awaiting getting up to full strength.
I appreciate that. If you have any ability to reach out to people on your side to talk about it, I think that'd be useful. And of course, we'll do the same.
Yeah.
But it's nice to meet you. We haven't had a chance to meet. It's very nice to see you. I realize it's remote, but I look forward to working with you, and I'm sure we'll have a good working relationship.
I look forward to it.
Me too. Now, there was one other topic that I don't think we touched on today that I've been, looking at, and I know this again is a New York City issue, and this goes to the proposal next year. I believe New York City is going to start ranked voting, so that the style of voting in New York City will change next year, where they'll have a ranked system rather than just voting for one candidate. You'll be able to rank your candidates. And there's an issue that comes to us on that, and that is the ability of our election systems to deal with that particular type of voting. And I'm just curious if the staff has an idea of where we are as far as our voting system's ability to function with that type of a voting process, whether there needs to be an upgrade to a voting system to accommodate that voting process, whether that upgrade is in the process, whether we have to approve an upgrade, whether our current machines can accommodate this kind of voting. I think it's a topic we need to deal with because this is coming around fast. I believe it's next fall. And maybe I'm not even sure if it's for the primary as well that this ranked voting would occur.
Actually, Commissioner, it could be as early as February with the first special elections. Certainly you're raising a very timely issue.
So I'm just curious if any of the staff or anybody has a thought or any ideas or any information about the ability of the voting machines currently being used by the New York City Board of Elections to accommodate this kind of voting.
So, Commissioner, I can certainly speak to that somewhat. With regard to can the existing systems that are in use by the New York City Board, can they accommodate ranked choice voting ballots? The answer is, our understanding right now is yes, they can. I know that part of the New York City change request to the existing ES&S system had to do with messaging presented to the voters for multi-page ballots. According to the New York City proposal for ranked choice voting, they did state that any sort of ranked choice contest, since they're only for certain city offices like mayor, public advocate, comptroller, borough president, and council member, that they be either grouped together on one side of a ballot or separated on a completely separate ballot page. The system obviously can handle multi-page ballots. That's one of the reasons why, in my understanding, New York City was requesting some changes from ES&S for some of the messaging to make it clear to voters. I think the issue in our conversations with New York City was largely having to do with the calculation of the results. Obviously, with ranked choice voting, depending on the number of candidates for an office, voters have the ability to kind of rank those candidates as far as preference through a number of different choices, first choice, second choice, and so on. If there's no clear winner, outright of the contest, then it goes to subsequent rounds where the lowest vote getter kind of gets eliminated, and then the second choices, for those voters who voted for that person as their first choice, would then get assigned to the other candidates that remain in the tabulation rounds. And that would continue until such time that there would be a winner of the contest. Right now, there's no way for the current EMS system used by New York City to do those additional calculations as certified. It's our understanding that ES&S does have a utility that's used in Maine, and then one other local jurisdiction, I can't remember exactly right now, but Maine is the statewide.
Minneapolis.
Okay. Where they use this utility as a separate piece of software that would take the cast vote record information out of the existing EMS and then perform the necessary calculations on those cast vote records and show a report that would kind of show for each round the tabulation of results until such time that a winner can be declared. One of the issues that New York City, or one of the questions that New York City had posed to Brendan and I when we spoke with them was, what was the approach that the board wanted to take, the state board wanted to take, with regard to either approving a vendor that they choose, or us selecting a vendor, or us doing some sort of testing or certification or approval of that software since it is being used outside of the certified system right now.
Okay, so I'm not sure where that leaves us, Tom. Let me just, do you feel that we are going to have to certify something then as a board that will allow the city to go forward with this voting process?
My personal belief in looking at the information that was provided to us, I did see a plan that came out that I received late last month that didn't really speak too much as far as what the charter language says to how the results should be tabulated. So without a very clear-cut list of items that the system should be held against, I do think that there at least should be some sort of review by the board as to this software system, since it is this kind of independent software that's being used to calculate and figure out who the winner of a contest is. I mean, the math seems somewhat straightforward, so we would have to kind of develop somewhat of a rubric as far as what we would be testing for. We would come up with a number of different scenarios that we would have to run through the system and make sure that the utility is indeed coming up with the proper results.
Well, in light of the fact, or the observation of Commissioner Kellner, this could come about as soon as February of next year. I mean, it's now September, and so that would mean within the next 4 months or so, we would have to engage in this kind of certification. And I'm just trying to understand the timeline here about how this is actually going to all come together to make sure the city board has what they need as a system to operate their election in February.
Well, I think I can answer this in two parts. So with regard to the utility itself that would be used for calculating the results of ranked choice elections, I do think that Brennan and I can get together, in the ops unit could certainly put together a plan to try to get that utility looked at and have a report to you, in relatively short order. I would say that, obviously I mentioned during my unit update that the change request that was submitted, which is not a need to have, but I think for New York City was a want to have, to kind of go as far as the additional messaging to voters who are voting by possibly ranked choice and non-ranked choice contests. Even though ES&S has to provide us with a new response, because I don't necessarily think that when they provided to us was helpful, I will say that at least in that initial response they provided, their timeline probably goes out beyond that kind of February timeframe for any kind of changes to the system for the additional messaging. So do I think that we could probably do the necessary testing in-house to the utility and get New York City an answer on that in time for them to use for next year? I do think that is possible. Like I said, I think the second part of that equation with regard to the messaging that they wanted to see changed, that would probably be something a little bit further out.
Okay, well, I guess we will look forward to getting that to us as soon as possible for us to consider, because I'm sure the city's anxious to get up and running with this. I know they have I believe it's a city council mandate that this be functional by 2021.
All right, we will get right on it then.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else to come before the board today? I know we have other meetings to go to. I know the Association of Election Commissioners is meeting virtually, of course, but they are meeting, and I know people, including myself, want to go to other meetings if we can. So if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn, and then we can reconvene at a future date.
So moved.
And is there a second?
Second.
And we will now stand adjourned. We'll reconvene at a future date, but in the interim, thank you very much. And that closes our meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.